Part 15. Man at the Top of the Food Chain. Author, Xionglang Guo. Chapter 141. In the Daxia Longke base, Li Anping walked on the corridor outside the cell, and Yang Guang followed him closely. Is the recent operation going smoothly? How many people came today? Li Anping asked Yang Guang behind him. Yang Guang answered cautiously, it's going well. Except for the 5 team members lost in Gushan City last time, everyone else successfully completed the mission and brought back a total of 126 superpower criminals. Among them, there is a level 4 ability user, 12 level 3 ability users, and the rest are all ability users below level 3. This is their criminal record. After speaking, Yang Guang handed a thick document to Li Anping. Yes, Li Anping nodded, took the document and quickly flipped through it. Yang Guang looked at Li Anping's speed of flipping through several pages in a few seconds, and he was no longer surprised when he first saw it. But in his heart, he still admired Li Anping's powerful memory and analytical ability. After this period of contact, Yang Guang also admired Li Anping more and more. The other party is powerful, cruel, harsh, and has amazing execution and concentration, and even hardly needs to rest or eat. Sometimes Yang Guang even subconsciously feels that if Li Anping ascends the throne of emperor, it may be more helpful to Daxia. When Li Anping walked to a big door, he stopped and handed the information to Yang Guang. The captain of the guard in front of the gate saluted and asked, 2 officers, the next is the cell for the capable people, please show your ID. It turned out that the cells that Li Anping just passed by were like the ones that Li Qian and Xia Yunyun stayed in last time. They imprisoned ordinary people who were captured by Daxia Longke and had no ability, or people who were not threatening or under house arrest. The next place Li Anping was going to was naturally the prison for superpower criminals. After the 2 handed their IDs to the guards, the captain of the guards scanned their IDs with an instrument, then handed them back with both hands, saluted again and let them go. With a choke, the electronic door weighing dozens of tons slowly opened, revealing a bright corridor, and Li Anping walked in first. On both sides of the corridor are large pieces of floor-to-ceiling glass, through which you can see the cells and prisoners behind the floor-to-ceiling glass. The prisoners in the first cells were not very violent. Li Anping and Yang Guang did not talk much. After walking about 200 meters, they passed through another electronic door, and the appearance of the cell also changed. On both sides of the corridor, there were all specially made metal cells, and the openings were all alloy columns, and the columns were electrified. Any prisoner who grabbed the column of the cell without permission would be electrocuted directly. There was only 1 prisoner in each cell. Some of them looked ferocious, while others looked approachable. But without exception, each of them had a strong or weak fluctuation of mind energy. After looking at these people with special abilities, Li Anping suddenly said to Yang Guang behind him, in addition to the 126 people captured by the Dragon Bird guards, there have been many people imprisoned before, right? Yes. Li Anping nodded and said, let all the people with special abilities of bloodline and mutation system in the cell have their blood tested, and the blood samples will be sent to the 8th Research Institute. The so-called 8th Research Institute is the new biological research institute built by Li Anping. For the convenience of management, Li Anping registered it under the name of Daxia Dragon Bird while keeping the personnel pure, and it became the 8th Research Institute of Daxia Dragon Bird, so it is called the 8th Research Institute. I understand, Yang Guang replied. He didn't have any questions. Because he didn't know what the 8th Research Institute was really researching. Since Li Anping established the 8th Research Institute, most of the projects about this institute were secrets. In order to keep the 8th Research Institute mysterious, Li Anping had asked the Dragon Bird guards to purge many people. Yang Guang didn't want to be on the purge list anytime, so he never asked about the 8th Research Institute. Suddenly, a big man in a cell knocked on the steel wall and shouted, Yang Guang, I didn't expect that you had your hands and feet chopped off after not seeing you for so long. Ha ha ha, Tell me who chopped it off, I'll treat him to a drink when I get out. Many people started to shout again, because all the people imprisoned in the cell were dangerous people, so they prohibited all outside contacts, no news, no visits, and according to the national population statistics, they were all dead. Where's SpecialAbilities? Where's SpecialAbilities? Let him get out. Call Song Bang in. I'll tell him everything he wants to know. Let me out now. Yang Guang, why did you bring a pretty boy in? Are you giving him to us to hum? Ha ha ha, what a tender young man, I like this one the most. Yang Guang frowned and explained in Li Anping's ear, they have been detained here for a long time, and they all have violent tendencies. Many of them have serious psychological problems, so no one has ever been willing to let them out before. Li Anping nodded. Seeing that Li Anping and Yang Guang were silent, the prisoners on both sides of the corridor shouted more wildly, and some even raised their middle fingers to Li Anping. Boy, come and lick your uncle's dick. I'm going to hum his dick. Li Anping looked coldly at the big man who led the roar and punched him directly in the air. Boom! The air in the corridor rolled back, making a sound like a tsunami, and a wave of air followed Li Anping's fist and rolled towards the big man. The big man jumped up immediately. Although he knew rationally that the alloy steel column outside could not be broken by this air shock wave, he still couldn't help but muster up all his energy and made a defensive move. Because his experience, his common sense, and his intuition all told him that the other party was more dangerous than any creature he had ever seen in his life. With a click, the air wave directly twisted the alloy steel column, and a trace of electric sparks emerged from the twisted steel column. The big man widened his eyes and looked in the direction of Li Anping with fear, watching the air wave twist the steel column directly, break it, and then sweep towards his body. He wanted to beg for mercy and wanted to escape, but the strong wind brought by the air wave blew him so hard that he couldn't even open his eyes, and the wind pressure directly pressed all the words he wanted to say back into his mouth. With a bang, the big man had exploded into a ball of blood mist, and the fragments of internal organs and bones covered the entire cell. After killing this ability user, Li Anping found that his physical fitness had not improved at all, and said lightly, "A bunch of garbage." He stepped into the depths of the cell. "Let's go, Yang Guang, and see if there is anything surprising for me behind." On both sides of the cell, no one dared to speak, swallowed their saliva, and looked at Li Anping stupidly. The few people who had cursed the most before hid in the shadow of the cell in fear, curled up like kittens, and listened to Li Anping's footsteps with fear on their faces. Until Li Anping's footsteps gradually disappeared, they dared to come out and carefully looked at the depths of the cell. Along the way, Li Anping saw many ability users, and their strength became stronger and stronger with the depth of the cell. From the beginning of level 0, level 1, to level 2, and then to level 3 ability users. Most of them were ignored by Li Anping. Since they could not be used as subordinates, it would be better to eat more clones than to eat them. However, there are also a few who are calm, capable, and know the current situation. They were ordered by Li Anping to be released and join the Dragon Bird of Daxia to increase the number of Dragon Bird guards. Li Anping considered that no matter how powerful he was, he still needed some strong men to serve him. Especially if he wanted to manage Daxia in the future and establish a new order on this land, an order that was not absolutely fair, but at least fairer and superior than the current order. He would definitely need a large number of strong men to help him. Of course, there were some malicious provocations or extremely vicious criminals along the way, such as some criminals, robbers, and murderers in the information given by Yang Guang. Li Anping killed them directly and absorbed them as nutrients. After walking all the way down and passing through an electronic door, Li Anping finally came to the area where the 4th level ability users were imprisoned. There were 6 things that looked like coffins in front of him, and each coffin was covered with a layer of transparent glass, and people could be seen lying inside. They were all 4th level ability users, because this level of ability users was too dangerous. So they were all imprisoned in a special way. The power they used was the generator in the room, and the power supply and the network had no external connection, so people outside could only monitor but not control. It was precisely because of this that when Thunder Emperor released all the prisoners, he did not release them together. All the level 4 ability users in these coffins were locked in this coffin for 24 hours, and the coffin was controlled by the supercomputer and personnel of Daxia Lonke. They would inject nerve anesthetics through the coffin from time to time according to the physiological conditions of the ability users, so that the ability users would always be in a deep sleep. Of course, some ability users are not afraid of anesthetics, so they use other methods to imprison them. For example, the one in front of Li Enping. It was a ball of meat, and he was placed directly under the glass cover, in the center of the coffin. Li Enping looked at the display screen outside the coffin and found that the temperature inside the coffin was about -110 degrees. Yang Guang explained, "This is Tang Vihan. His ability is to transform his body into various animals and people, and his body has strong adaptability. I heard that his ability is very useful. It took a lot of effort to capture him more than 30 years ago. According to research, his body will fall into hibernation at -110 degrees. Because the people above think that this person with the ability is very valuable for research, they have kept him alive and injected him with nutrient solution every month." Interesting hearing that the other party can transform and become various people and animals. Li Enping thought about how useful this ability is. No wonder the previous leaders were reluctant to kill him. Thinking of this, Li Enping clicked on the menu on the external display screen on the coffin. "Sir, what do you want?" Yang Guang looked at Li Enping in doubt. "Let me talk to him. He should have figured it out after being locked up for more than 30 years. Yang Guang subconsciously wanted to stop Li Enping, but after thinking of the other party's strength, he stopped thinking about it. With Li Enping's fighting power, Yang Guang believed that the ball of flesh in front of him was definitely not a match for the adults, not to mention that he was also very curious about this person with special abilities. The person with special abilities who could hibernate at -110 degrees for 30 years, his vitality was indeed amazing. In addition to the ability to transform at will, if the great Xia dragon bird could be added, it would indeed be a great help. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiong Lango. Chapter 142. I saw that the temperature inside the entire coffin gradually increased under Li Enping's operation. 100 degrees below zero, 90 degrees below zero, 80 degrees below zero. Half an hour later, when the temperature rose to -20 degrees, the flesh ball suddenly shook, and a huge eyeball squeezed out of the flesh ball, staring at Li Enping. "Oh, he's really alive?" Interesting, Li Enping saw the eyes staring at him. He was not afraid at all. Instead, he showed an expression of interest and increased the temperature. Yang Guang on the side saw such a strange and powerful life, and unknowingly raised his mind energy to be on guard at all times. 5 minutes later, when the temperature reached -5 degrees, the meat ball suddenly began to expand. First, a huge flesh thorn shattered the glass cover of the coffin, and then the puddle of rotten meat rushed towards Li Enping in front of the coffin. "It's interesting." Li Enping smiled slightly, grabbed the flesh thorn directly, and then flicked it hard to throw out the swollen flesh. With a bang, the meatball hit the wall, making a loud noise. Li Enping shouted, "I am the commander of Daxia Lonke now. Are you Tang Vihan? I want to talk to you." Roar. When the meatball heard the words Daxia Lonke, it swelled violently again, and its hands and feet were slowly squeezed out of the meatball. A hairless, thin, short, deformed human was lying there. He looked at Li Enping with hatred on his face and murmured, "Daxia Lonke, Daxia Lonke." Li Enping frowned and continued to ask, "Let's talk. If you are willing to join, you will not be locked up. You will have a decent job and a certain degree of freedom. Great summer dragon bird, the dwarf roared again, got down on all fours and ran towards Li Anping, kill you. Great summer dragon bird. Just as Yang Guang was about to take action, he felt his back being pushed gently, and his whole body had floated out. You go aside first. Li Anping pushed Yang Guang away, looked at Tang Vihan who was rushing towards him, and gave him a slap in the face. The other party seemed to be like a fly, and was directly swept to the ground by the slap. His head was dizzy and he could not stand up at all. Are you awake? Li Anping asked. Unexpectedly, Tang Vihan roared again, saying the words Great Summer Dragon Bird. His hands turned into sharp claws, and he grabbed Li Anping. Li Anping slapped Tang Vihan again impatiently, and this time he turned Tang Vihan's head 180 degrees. He fell to the ground with a thud and couldn't get up for a long time. But after a while, after he recovered, he rushed towards Li Anping again. After probing like this for about 10 minutes, Tang Vihan had been slapped more than 20 times, and his whole face was swollen, but his expression was no longer as crazy as before. He looked at Li Anping with fear in his eyes, and then he didn't dare to attack anymore. Are you awake? Li Anping waved his hand and said. As soon as he saw Li Anping's hand waving, fear flashed in Tang Vihan's eyes, like a puppy, and he couldn't help but retreat. It looks like he is crazy, Li Anping said to Yang Guang. No wonder, after being tortured like this for 30 years, most people will go crazy. Li Anping raised his fingers at Tang Vihan and said, come here. Tang Vihan hesitated and didn't dare to come over, but he was also very afraid of Li Anping and didn't dare not come over. He looked hesitant. Huh, Li Anping snorted coldly and frowned. Tang Vihan was immediately frightened and jumped to Li Anping's feet with a look of fear on his face. Li Anping probably already understood Tang Vihan's condition. After being frozen for 30 years, his brain seemed to be damaged. Acting a bit like a child. But seeing how he hated Daxia, he should still have some memories. Also, when he was fighting just now, he turned his hands into animal claws, so his ability should still be usable. So Li Anping pointed to Yang Guang in the distance and said, become like him. Tang Vihan followed Li Anping's finger, looked at Yang Guang, and nodded. The next moment, the skin on his body trembled, and his whole person began to change. His body became taller, his hands and feet became thicker, and hair grew on his head. In just a few seconds, another Yang Guang appeared. In front of Li Anping. Except for the mechanical hands and feet of the real Yang Guang, there is no difference between the Yang Guang transformed by Tang Vihan and the real Yang Guang. But this perfection was immediately broken by Tang Vihan's fawning look. Yang Guang saw a man who looked exactly like himself, bending over and looking at Li Anping with a silly smile, as if he was a mentally retarded person, feeling indescribably strange in his heart. However, Li Anping was very satisfied with Tang Vihan's transformation ability and murmured, the ability is good, but he is a bit stupid and needs to be trained again. After saying that, he walked towards another coffin. In the coffin was a skinny man, his whole body soaked in liquid. Yang Guang on the side quickly came up and introduced, this man's name is Ma Yi, he is a serial murderer. Originally, this matter was not our responsibility, but he is a 4th level ability user, and ordinary police have no way to deal with him, so it is up to us caught him. After hearing the story of this ponytail, I knew that the other party was a scumbag. Li Anping had no interest in letting him out. He punched out directly, and the coffin and ponytail turned into a pile of debris in an instant, and then he moved to the next coffin. Seeing Li Anping kill Ma Wei so simply and brutally, Yang Guang and Tang Vihan couldn't help but twitch their eyelids. Especially Tang Vihan, seeing the broken body on the ground, thinking of how he had been attacking Li Anping just now, he felt even more scared. The next two were murderers and arsonists, and they were unforgivable. Li Anping didn't release them either, and let them be imprisoned in this dark underground forever. There were 3 people left, One was called Audrey, because her ability was very precious. She was an angel of the bloodline system. It was said that there were no more than 5 people with the ability of the angel bloodline system alive in the world, so she was also captured by Daxia to study the secrets of this bloodline ability. There was also a person called Ziuume, whose ability was called Death Ray, which belonged to the field system and could shoot 5 different rays from his fingers. The last one was called Yanbei, whose ability was the rare external system. Speaking of which, this was the first time Li Enping had seen an external system ability. There are very few people with abilities in this system. Their abilities are often illogical and against the rules of reality. The reasons for their abilities are unknown and difficult to classify into the other 5 systems. Therefore, the outer system is the most chaotic and irregular system. Some of its abilities are very strong, while others are very weak. Yanbei's ability is also very strange. Daxia calls it collapse. He can create a field that keeps shrinking inward with absolute gravity. All objects in the field will enter an irreversible collapse. In the world currently known to humans, there is no material or creature that can resist Yanbei's attack. Even the scientists of Daxia speculated that if Yanbei was given enough time, he could even create a real black hole and destroy the entire planet. They did not find the reason for this ability from the magnetic field, smell, pheromone, DNA, and other aspects, and finally classified Yanbei's ability as the outer system. It is precisely because of his extremely dangerous ability that Daxia decided to imprison him permanently. At this time, the coffins where the 3 people were opened together. Li Enping stood aside and watched the awakening potion being injected into the bodies of the 3 people. Yang Guang stood behind him with a vigilant look on his face. Facing these 3 dangerous level 4 ability users, he couldn't be as calm as Li Enping. Tang Vihan, on the other hand, returned to his original short appearance, squatting at Li Enping's feet like a puppy, looking at the 3 open coffins with curiosity. After waiting for a few minutes, Li Enping suddenly said, "How long do you 3 plan to sleep? I'll be frank with you. You now have 3 choices. The first is to be my subordinate, the second is to be killed by me, and the third is to continue to stay in the coffin. So which one do you choose?" You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiong Lango. Chapter 143. After Li Enping finished speaking, the 3 people reacted at the same time. First, Audrey, who possessed the ability of an angel, slowly stood up from the coffin in a white hospital gown. She looked pale and thin, like an undeveloped junior high school student after being imprisoned for a long time. When she stood up, her body trembled, and the snow-white wings behind her spread out vigorously, more than 3 meters long. She really looked like an angel in Western mythology. The next person to stand up was Zhou Mai, who had tattoos all over his face and looked like a non-mainstream gangster, looking at Yang Guang and Tang Vihan. As for Li Enping, a 3rd-level ability user was not taken seriously by him at all. The last person to climb out of the coffin was Yanbei, who looked disheveled and had a full beard. After climbing out, he just glanced around and walked directly to the door. Yang Guang was the first to jump out and shouted, "Yanbei, didn't you hear what the commander said?" "You're talking nonsense." Yanbei waved his hand, and a transparent force field enveloped Yang Guang. At the critical moment, Li Enping pulled Yang Guang out, but even so, Yang Guang's mechanical hands and feet were all forcibly torn apart. A second later, the force field disappeared, and only the location covered by the force field could be seen. A large piece of metal floor had disappeared, and they were all crushed to pieces by the collapsed force field. What a terrible ability! Yang Guang looked at Yanbei with lingering fear. As a level 4 ability user, Yanbei could kill him instantly with his superior ability. If this kind of collapsibility is directly tested on the physical body, most level 5 ability users will probably be seriously injured or even killed instantly. No wonder he was locked up, his ability is too dangerous. Yan Bei saw Li Anping push Yang Guang away and avoid his fatal blow. He seemed to feel a little surprised and muttered, "It seems that you let me out." Audrey and Zhou Mai on the side quietly retreated to the corner of the room. They were not like Yan Bei, who was locked up and his mind was a little unclear. Now they just wanted to escape from this place as soon as possible, and they definitely didn't want to be involved in Yan Bei's battle. "It seems that you have slept too long and your brain is a little bit bad." Li Anping put Yang Guang, who had broken his hands and feet, back to the ground and handed him to Tang Vihan. Then he took a step to Yan Bei, grabbed his hand directly, and threw Yan Bei to the floor like a pancake. With a boom. Li Anping's speed was too fast, Yan Bei couldn't react at all, and could only keep a big letter and hit the floor. Just like a fly that has been hit by a fly swatter. With this slap, Yan Bei felt a terrible pain all over his body, as if all his bones were broken. His body was completely numb, his limbs were powerless, and there was a bloody taste in his mouth. "Ah!" Yan Bei was furious and roared, "I'm going to kill you." More than 20 collapse force fields suddenly appeared around Yan Bei, and the violent gravity destroyed all the surrounding matter. A large number of equipment were turned into metal slag, and the alarm sounded in the base. Although Yan Bei's ability was activated quickly, it was not faster than Li Anping. When his collapse force field appeared, Li Anping had already moved away from the previous position, and when the collapse force field destroyed all matter and disappeared again, he had come to Yan Bei again. Li Anping stretched out his right hand, grabbed Yan Bei's neck directly, lifted him up, looked into his eyes, and said word by word, "Do you want to die so much?" His right hand gradually exerted force, and Yan Bei's neck made a crackling sound, as if it would break at any time. At this moment, Yan Bei's eyes finally regained clarity, but he felt that his heartbeat was almost stopped. His life was completely controlled by Li Anping, who could kill him at any time. Yan Bei felt like he was being strangled by the god of death. The opponent's strength only showed the tip of the iceberg, but it was completely superior to him. Seeing the fear in Yan Bei's eyes, Li Anping snorted coldly and threw him to the ground. But this time Yan Bei no longer had any complaints, just standing there stupidly, not knowing what to do. On the other side, Zhou Mai was the first to kneel on one knee and shouted to Li Anping, "My lord, I am willing to be loyal." But Audrey raised her wings and flew directly towards the gate. The ability that Yan Bei launched just now directly destroyed the electronic door of the cell. Audrey flew very fast, which is also the strongest point of the angel species, that is, the flying speed. They can fly at subsonic speed for a day and a night. And in battle, this ability to fly at high speed also gives them great help. But this time, before she flew more than 10 meters, a strong hand had already grabbed her wings and pulled her down. The huge force directly pulled Audrey down from the high-speed flight. She screamed and felt that her wings seemed to be torn apart, and she fell heavily to the ground. Yan Bei, who was standing by, saw Audrey being grabbed by the wings and smashed to the ground by Li Anping. His neck shrank slightly and his face showed reluctance. He seemed to feel how painful it was for him to be smashed to the ground by Li Anping just now. Looking at Audrey lying on the ground and unable to stand up, Li Anping patted the dust on his hands and said lightly, "Don't you understand what people say?" Yan Bei immediately knelt on one knee after hearing this and said nervously, "I am also willing to be loyal to you, my lord." Li Anping nodded and looked at Audrey again. He didn't think much of this woman. Her ability was much weaker than Yan Bei and Zhou Mai. The biggest use was that she belonged to the bloodline system, and the difficulty of cloning was much lower, which was a good experimental material. After hearing what Yan Bei and Li Anping said, Audrey reluctantly lay on the ground, raised her head, looked at Li Anping in frustration and said, "I can also be loyal to you. But you must give me enough freedom." Li Anping shrugged and said, "No problem." At this time, a large number of guards ran into the corridor outside the cell. The leader, Lu Sheng, looked at the cell that was mostly destroyed and asked, "Sir, are you okay?" Li Anping shook his head, "It's okay, let someone repair it here, and take them to Li Qian by the way." After that, Li Anping asked Li Qian to monitor Audrey and the other two, and then collected a blood sample from each of them and sent it to the 8th Research Institute, in the hands of Shi Wen. In the office, Li Anping was scanning Li Qian's newspaper in his hand. Sun Hao suddenly rushed in, looked at Li Anping angrily and asked, "Why did you release so many people in the cell?" "They are very useful." Li Anping calmly put the newspaper back into the drawer, and said slowly, "Now Daxia Longke is short of manpower. Instead of letting them rot in the prison, it is better to come out and contribute some strength." "But they are all criminals," Sun Hao said dissatisfiedly. "I think you have been doing things more and more extreme recently. I just recognize the reality more. My past practices, even if I work hard for 100 years, cannot completely improve the world. What they need is a completely new order." Li Anping was still patient with Sun Hao. He explained, "And I just released some people with lighter charges or even wronged people." Sun Hao reluctantly accepted Li Anping's explanation and left. Seeing Sun Hao's back as he walked out of the office, Li Anping thought that if the other party knew what he was doing now, especially the dark side of the 8th Research Institute, he might turn against him. Maybe he should be transferred away from Tianjing. Li Anping still doesn't want to lose his friend Sun Hao. But it's impossible for him to stop. Because he needs more power, stronger power, until this power can sweep away everything and let him establish a new order in this world. Even if the source of this power is so evil. As Li Anping kills more and more people and becomes more powerful, his pursuit of justice in his heart is getting lower and lower. He will destroy evil, but when justice hinders him, he doesn't mind smashing the other party to pieces. Just as he was thinking, black thoughts appeared behind Li Anping again, and he murmured, "Is it coming again?" I saw that the black thoughts behind him formed a human shape again, but the difference was that this time the black figure actually had a pair of eyes. The eyes were motionless, just looking straight at Li Anping, giving people a creepy feeling. But this time Li Anping still couldn't communicate with this black figure, nor could he control it. After a few minutes, the figure disappeared. The only change was the pair of black eyes, and Li Anping found that the figure appeared recently and lasted longer and longer. Unable to come up with any results, Li Anping took out the newspaper again and began to scan the information of the monitor. At this moment, the phone rang. It was Lu Feng, the intelligence supervisor of Daxia Longke. In the battle against the Thunder Emperor, he had used his ability to change his face to lure the other party. At this moment, his voice sounded a little worried. "The Longke guards sent by Gus Han City have disappeared again. This time, including the last time, there are a total of 15 people. Among them is a 4th-level ability user who was sent for the second time. Man at the top of the food chain." Author, Xianglang Guo. Chapter 144. People were coming and going in Tianjing railway station. People were working, going home, traveling, visiting relatives, and all kinds of people were coming and going. Mixed in the crowd, a short boy followed the crowd and walked out of the station. The boy's clothes were all branded, but they always made people feel that they were a little ill-fitting. He looked like a boy from the countryside who came to Tianjing to work wearing fake goods. But his smart and cunning eyes gave people a very smart and cunning feeling. The boy's name was Zhoukong. He was an orphan from Beishui village, Hualiu township, outside Gushan city. This was also his first time to come to a city as big as Tianjing. But he was different from other teenagers who came to Beijing for the first time. Zhoukong had never been to school, and he didn't even finish elementary school, but he was very rich. He never cared about money. Anyway, as long as he wanted, How much money was not a problem. But for him, money was enough. Just like the brand name sportswear he was wearing, he spent more than 20,000 yuan to buy it. He also knew that he was probably cheated by the specialty store, but he didn't care. Anyway, money was something he was meant to use. As for Zhou Kang's purpose of coming to Tianjin, one was to see the capital of Daxia, and the other was because 5 people came to their village to capture him some time ago, and he spent a lot of effort to kill them one by one. But it didn't take long for 10 more people to come. They were also capable people. The people who came this time were more powerful, especially a few of them, who were only a little bit worse than him. But unfortunately, a little bit worse was also worse, and they were all killed by Zhou Kang. Originally, in the past 10 years, Zhou Kang, who had the ability, always felt that he was very lonely and an alien in this world. He even doubted whether he was an alien. Until he met these 15 people some time ago, it was a pity that these people were all enemies who came to capture him and hurt him. After Zhou Kang killed these 15 people, he checked their information and documents and found that they all came from an organization called Daxia Dragon Bird, headquartered in Tianjin. The second purpose of his coming here this time was to find the people of this organization. Ask them why they sent people to arrest him. If they are unwilling to reconcile, Zhou Kang decided to destroy this organization. However, he decided to give them a chance. After all, they are all the same kind. Zhou Kang began to look forward to meeting these people. As for killing, Zhou Kang didn't care at all. Since he awakened his ability, he has killed quite a few people. But he has never been punished by law. For him who has the ability, the law is meaningless. Because only when the police catch people will they be punished by law, and he will never be caught. But how to find it? Zhou Kang scratched the back of his head and began to think. So in the next few days, Zhou Kang wandered in the streets and alleys of Tianjin city. While traveling, he secretly inquired about the news of Daxia Longke. Because he is not a professional intelligence officer, he has revealed a lot of flaws, but Zhou Kang doesn't care at all. He is very confident in his ability, especially as he grows older, his ability is getting stronger and stronger. Now he will not be afraid even if he is surrounded by the army. But if he is really wanted, his life will be very troublesome. He doesn't know foreign languages, and he doesn't want to escape abroad. On the other side, in the office of the secret agency, Entalogo also received a report. Oh? Zhou Kang? Isn't this the person that Daxia Longke went to Gushan City to catch? Entalogo unexpectedly saw the report on Zhou Kang's whereabouts in the past few days in the data. Why did he come to Tianjin? Entalogo asked in confusion. Is he still asking around about Daxia Longke? He has been targeted by several departments. A subordinate said, I heard that the people sent by Daxia Longke to Gushan have disappeared. Sir, do you think we should tell them about Zhou Kang? Entalogo thought for a while and said, tell them, it is estimated that he is also a capable person. He can make the people sent by Daxia Longke disappear. Maybe he is quite powerful. Let professionals deal with them. When the secret agency passed the news to Li Anping, Zhou Kang's investigation of Daxia Longke finally made new progress. He quietly followed a girl, looking at her back with a pair of eyes that looked somewhat covetous. Zhou Kang had been following her for almost half an hour. He wanted to go up and say a few words, but he hadn't thought of what to say. After following her for a few more streets, Zhou Kang suddenly found that the girl turned into an alley, so he followed her in. But who knew that as soon as he entered the alley, the girl came out from behind him, and Zhou Kang felt something like a stick pressed against his waist. Xia Yunyun looked at Zhou Kang with a wary look on her face and asked, Who are you? I have a high-voltage electric baton in my hand. If you don't want to be paralyzed, you'd better tell the truth. Zhou Kang looked calm, because the electric baton was useless to him. Miss, I'm sorry, I just feel that there is a power in your body that is very similar to mine. Jokang asked a little embarrassedly, excuse me, are you also a person with special abilities? Oh, Xia Yunyun didn't expect that the other party would ask this question. She didn't feel any mental energy from Jokang's body, and she didn't think that the other party was a person with special abilities at all. Haha, it may be a bit abrupt for me to ask this, but this is the first time I meet someone like you, so I want to get to know you, Jokang said again when he saw that Xia Yunyun did not answer. Xia Yunyun looked at him for a few times and thought, there is no trace of mental energy at all. Is he a level 0 ability user? But shouldn't a level 0 ability user be able to feel mental energy? How did he know that I am an ability user? Xia Yunyun didn't know that Jokang had the ability of steel and iron bones. Because of this ability, his mind energy was hidden inside his body to enhance his body's defense. Therefore, other ability users cannot sense his thought energy at all. After thinking about it, Xia Yunyun withdrew the electric prod. After all, the other party did not seem to have any malicious intentions. She said casually, I am an ability user, but you'd better not inquire about this kind of thing. Asking the identity of the ability person is a big deal. Avoid. Oh, Jokang nodded and said, thank you for reminding me. My name is Jokang. I have never met other people with abilities before, and I don't know how to deal with them. Speaking of which, I came to Tianjin this time. I'm looking for an organization called SpecialAbilities, do you know about it? At SpecialAbilities base, Li Enping opened an email on his computer, which contained news about Jokang and his detailed information. Jokang awakened his ability 5 years ago. He was originally just a gangster in the countryside. One day, he suddenly awakened his ability. Then he used his ability to rape a woman in the same village and beat the woman's husband to death. Because he still had the mentality of an ordinary person at that time, so he chose to escape directly. But it was also because of this incident that he came into the government's sight. After that, Jokang was successively related to some criminal cases such as robbery, extortion, and kidnapping. However, as he grew older, his abilities became stronger and stronger, and his crimes became more and more careful. The police basically had nothing to do with him. This time SpecialAbilities got the news, so Li Enping sent Longke guards to catch him. Unexpectedly, none of the 15 Dragon Bird guards, including 2 level 4 ability users, came back. Each ability user is of great value, not to mention that Li Enping lost 15 of them all at once. Seeing that Jokang had actually found Tianjin to inquire about SpecialAbilities, Li Enping sneered and called Lu Sheng directly. Yajiao, I will send you an email now. Send 3 level 4 ability users to catch this guy. Then send it directly to me at the base. Yes, it's okay to get injured, but don't kill him. I want to live. After hanging up the phone, Li Enping looked at the other party's ability assessment again. Regarding Jokang's ability, he is not very sure. The content in the report is more of a guess. Analyzing Jokang's staff, based on the police tracking him in recent years and his criminal record, they believe that Jokang is a person with multiple abilities, possessing a total of more than 4 abilities. Looking at the information, a smile gradually appeared on Li Enping's Li man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xionglang Go. Chapter 145. Xia Yunyun glanced at Jokang in surprise, wondering that he actually came to see SpecialAbilities. What do you want from SpecialAbilities? Do you know? He Jokang said with a smile, last time they sent people to catch me, I defeated them. But then they sent people here again. Although they couldn't defeat me, but in case they always sent it would be troublesome if someone came to deal with me, wouldn't it? So I decided to come and find them myself. After Jokang finished speaking, there was a proud expression on his face. Don't look at me because I'm thin, but I'm very strong. What? Xia Yunyun was shocked, but on the surface he remained calm and asked tentatively, really, Daxialonke is very powerful. What is your ability? Really, Jokong said with a smile, I think their abilities are very strong, but I am even more powerful, but I can't just tell you what my abilities are. Xia Yunyun smiled, that's right. But I'm not very familiar with Daxialonke. Let me ask my friend for you. He knows more. After saying that, she took out her mobile phone and dialed Li Enping's number. Number? I don't know what this guy's background is, but he's probably pretty good at defeating the ability users sent by Daxialonke. I'd better call Li Enping and ask him to send someone over. Just as Xia Yunyun was thinking about these things, he suddenly heard Jokong say, oh? Who is Li Enping? Oh, of course Li Enping is. Halfway through, Xia Yunyun suddenly looked up at Jokong and said in disbelief, how do you know? How do I know what you are thinking? Jokong said with a smile, I know his mind, I can know what you are thinking. He continued, how is it possible? We need to inform Li Enping as soon as possible. Is that what you think? Oh. It turns out that this Li Enping is the boss of Daxialonke. As he spoke, Jokong took Xia Yunyun's cell phone directly, then let me talk to him. Li Enping was on his way out of the base when he suddenly felt his phone vibrate. He took out his phone and saw that it was a call from Xia Yunyun. This was the first time he received a call from Xia Yunyun. Turning on his phone, Li Enping asked, hey, why did you remember to call me? On the phone, a strange man's voice came, hello? Are you Li Enping? Who are you? Li Enping frowned and asked coldly, where is Li Qian? Hey, let me ask you something. Are you Li Enping? Are you the boss of Daxialonke? Jokong asked maliciously, where are you? I'll come find you. Looking for me? Li Enping asked doubtfully. Yes, tell me where you are and I will come find you, Jokong said with a smile, don't run away, otherwise I don't know what I will do. This big sister is very tempting. Xia Yunyun's struggling and whimpering sounds came from the phone. She shouted, Li Enping, Wu. Then came Jokang's voice again, tell me, where are you? Run away. Li Enping's tone was like an iceberg, the intersection of 13th Avenue and 12th Avenue, I'll wait for you there. But, whether you can see me depends on whether you can get here or not. He Jokong smiled and hung up the phone, only to find Xia Yunyun on the side staring at him viciously. He said helplessly, I'm sorry, sister, I also want to deal with this Daxialonke in one go. I will let you go when I see Li Enping. Xia Yunyun rolled her eyes while listening to Jokang's words, looking at Jokong as if she were looking at a dead person. Sister, you are very powerful. After many people know that I can read minds, the less they want to reveal anything, the more they can't control their thoughts. As a result, you started counting immediately, and now all you think about is 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. Jokong was unhappy with her mocking look, and explained again, I know it's hard for you to understand. But you'll know later, my ability is far beyond your imagination. He showed a confident expression, looking at the high-rise buildings in Tianjin City. His eyes were full of appreciation and admiration. I have been staying in Gushan before. I didn't expect that there is such a prosperous city in the world. Jokong laughed, I have decided to stay here in the future. Tianjin is much more fun than Gushan. Xia Yunyun was too lazy to pay attention to him and kept counting silently in his mind. After all, he is no match for Jokong, so he can let Li Enping come and save him. But what if Jokong knew Li Enping's power through his heart, and ambushed, escaped, or used him to threaten Li Enping? That would be troublesome. As it is now, this Jokong is completely superstitious about his own power, which is best for Xia Yunyun. Jokong didn't take it seriously either. He knew that most people had never seen it with their own eyes and would never have imagined that humans could be as strong as him. In the past, the police, gangsters, and rich people all thought this way, and they were all bullied miserably by him. So Jokang took a taxi, took Xia Yunyun directly and went to the place Li Anping said. On the other side, Tang Vihan, Zhou Mai and Yan Bei have also left Daxia Longke's base for more than an hour. Among them, Zhou Mai is driving a car, and Yan Bei and Tang Vihan are sitting in the back row. Tang Vihan has undergone nutritional supplements at this moment, and his appearance has changed drastically. He has become a young and cute-looking teenager. It is estimated that he came out through the transformation of an ability user. I don't know if he really looked like this when he was young. Yan Bei, who was beside him, also shaved his beard and cut his hair. He looked middle-aged. He and Tang Vihan were both locked up in the Daxia Dragon Bird base for a long time. At this moment, they came to the ground again, and they were filled with emotion. Looking at the tall buildings, they occasionally let out one or two surprised sounds. Zhou Mai, who was driving, didn't have this feeling at all. He was arrested a few years ago. Although Tianjing has changed a lot, it is not enough to cause him to be amazed. Yan Bei asked, "How long will it take? Where is that Jokang?" Zhou Mai didn't dare to make this guy with terrible ability angry, and comforted him, "It will be soon. It's that Jokang who keeps moving around. I guess I should be able to find him next time I locate him." Damn guy, Yan Bei's tone was full of dissatisfaction, "Wasted so much of my time. When I find him, I will break his legs." Suddenly, a ring rang in Tang Vihan's arms. He took out his mobile phone in a hurry, looking like he wanted to press it, but didn't know how to press it. "Give it to me." Yan Bei impatiently grabbed the phone. "Hello? Yan Bei? This is Lu Sheng." Lu Sheng's voice was on the other end of the phone. "According to multiple channels, we have now mastered Jokang's latest location. He is now in a taxi and is going to the intersection of 12th Avenue and 13th Avenue. You can stop him on the north side of 12th Avenue. "Why do you want to stop him?" Yan Bei asked. "We can just wait for him at the destination." "Really?" Lu Sheng smiled with some evil taste. "Lord Li Anping is waiting for someone over there. Do you want him to be disturbed during your first mission?" Yan Bei swallowed his saliva, and seemed to remember the scene of being beaten by Li Anping again. The body that had been healed seemed to feel pain again. "I know, I won't let him go there. Also, Jokang is now accompanied by a female hostage, and her safety must be guaranteed. This is the latest instruction from the adults." Yan Bei shouted, "I know." After hanging up the phone and throwing the phone back to Tang Vihan, Yan Bei said with a cold face, "Zhou Mai, did you hear that?" "Yeah." Zhou Mai nodded seriously. "Then drive faster for me," Yan Bei said anxiously. "Damn it, I don't want to run into that bastard again. We have to hurry over and catch Jokang, that bastard." Tang Vihan, who was still frightened, nodded vigorously. He hadn't spoken for too long and stuttered when he spoke. He only heard a voice from his throat, "Faster, faster." "Got it." Zhou Mai exerted force on his feet and stepped on the accelerator. The whole car had rushed out at a speed of more than 100 yards, overtaking one car after another, and even ran through several red lights, almost causing a car accident. In the back seat, the two people with shadows in their hearts had no time to look at the scenery. They all concentrated on looking at the taxis around them, and their mental energy was burning like a flame. I'm afraid that as soon as they saw Jokang, they would pounce on him like two tigers and tear each other to pieces. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Man at the Top of the Food Chain. Author, Xiong Go. Chapter 146. Jokang and Xia Yunyun took a taxi and drove along the 12th Avenue. Unfortunately, when they were about 1 kilometer away from the destination, a dense crowd of cars appeared in front of them, and the road was completely blocked. The taxi driver turned around and kindly reminded them, "There is no way. It is rush hour now. There is a big traffic jam. There is still about 1 kilometer to go. Why don't you get off and walk over? At this point, it is faster to walk over than to take my car. Is this a traffic jam? Jokang looked at the road full of cars with curiosity, smiled and said, "Thank you, uncle. Anyway, we are about to arrive, let's get off and walk over." A few minutes later, Xia Yunyun followed Jokang, keeping the pace of walking all the way, and walked towards the intersection of the 12th Avenue and the 13th Avenue in front. There were crowds of people everywhere along the way, but even so, Xia Yunyun wanted to escape several times, but she didn't really escape. It seemed that there was a voice in her heart telling her that she couldn't escape, absolutely couldn't escape. "Sister, you are right." Jokang turned around and said with a smile, "If you want to escape, you will never be able to escape, so just follow me obediently. I will let you go when we find that Li Anping." Hearing what Jokang said, Xia Yunyun felt depressed. After all, she was also a third-level ability user. Although her ability was useless, she could only communicate with animals and could not even command them. But if she only relied on her mind, ordinary people could not get close to her at all. But Song Tian before and Jokang now were all ability users stronger than him, so Li Anping had to come to save her, and she became a burden. "Oh? Who is Song Tian?" Jokang asked. Xia Yunyun was furious, but she could only try her best to control herself from thinking too much and started counting again. At this moment, Jokang suddenly turned his head and stared straight at the back of Xia Yunyun. Just 50 meters behind Xia Yunyun, in the crowd, 3 arrogant and overbearing thoughts rose to the sky, and the overwhelming malice pressed towards Jokang, as if to completely destroy him. Yan Bei showed a bloodthirsty smile on his face. "Finally found you. Die." As he pointed his hand, a miniature collapsed space appeared on Jokang's head, but as early as when he pointed his finger, Jokang had already retreated with a change of face. Because with the appearance and attack of Yan Bei, he had already understood the other party's ability and the effect of the ability through reading the mind. These 3 guys are so powerful, maybe each of them is more powerful than the people who came to Gushan to catch me. Jokang rushed into the crowd and began to think about countermeasures. First, hide in the crowd, relying on the ability of reading the mind. I can defeat them one by one. On the other side, Yan Bei saw Jokang hiding in the crowd, and he yelled impatiently, "Zhou Mai, you protect that woman. Tang Vihan, you follow him closely." Then he laughed wildly and said, "I'll clear the place." He danced wildly with his hands, and countless collapsed spaces appeared on street lights, store signs, the ground, and so on. The entire road was suddenly in chaos. The collapse caused broken wires, damaged signs, cracked roads, and burst water pipes. Various explosions and shock waves appeared. Although no casualties were caused, the crowd immediately rioted. Ordinary people saw this situation and started to run away immediately. But compared to this, the riot caused by Tang Vihan was even greater. I don't know what he was thinking. After hearing Yan Bei's words, he also roared to the sky. Then, in the drastic changes in his body, Tang Vihan's body continued to grow taller. At the same time, his head turned into a wolf head, his hands and feet turned into 4 claws, and the whole person had turned into a werewolf-like monster, rushing towards Jokang. "Monster! Run away! The monster is coming to eat people! Oh my God!" When the people around saw Tang Vihan turn into such a monster, they ran even faster. In an instant, all the people within a few hundred meters around ran away. Jokang saw Tang Vihan rushing towards him, his eyes condensed, and he suddenly rushed towards Xia Yunyun. The 3 opponents showed strong strength. If he could take Xia Yunyun as a hostage, his chances of winning would increase greatly. Seeing the performance of Yan Bei and Tang Vihan, Zhou Mai shook his head helplessly. 2 idiots. After saying that, he pointed with his right index finger, and saw a red ray shooting towards Xia Yunyun. With a swish, the red ray passed by Xia Yunyun's waist. Wherever it passed, there was a burst of heat in the air. After the ray passed Xia Yunyun, it directly crossed hundreds of meters and melted a large piece of the concrete floor. Xia Yunyun screamed in fear and immediately ran behind Zhou Mai and others. At the same time, Zhou Mai's ray also forced Zhou Kang, who was rushing towards Xia Yunyun, back. This is the power of mind reading. With this ability, almost no one can plot against Zhou Kang. Even Xiu Mei's death light and Yan Bei's collapse may only need one attack to seriously injure Zhou Kang, but they must hit the target. On the other side, when Zhou Kang was forced back by Xiu Mei, Tang Vihan finally rushed up, and he opened his wolf mouth and bit Zhou Kang's shoulder. Zhou Kang did not dodge Tang Vihan's attack, and let him bite his shoulder. He sneered in his heart, "My body is made of steel and iron. Let alone letting you bite, I can even take bullets." Crack, crack, Tang Vihan found that he could not bite Zhou Kang no matter how hard he bit him. The opponent was as hard as a piece of iron. Then Zhou Kang punched Tang Vihan in the stomach. Zhou Kang's strength was far beyond Tang Vihan's imagination. This punch made him foam at the mouth and make a humming sound. Then Zhou Kang grabbed his head and threw him out. Useless thing. Seeing that Tang Vihan failed, Yan Bei grinned and shouted at Zhou Kang's position with both palms, "Turn into scum for me." The terrifying breath came from the void. The next second, in the spherical space with a diameter of 5 meters where Zhou Kang was, all the matter was squeezed into a ball under the force of collapse, and then turned into countless particles floating in the air. Even the ground turned into a big pit, and the surface of the pit seemed to be cut by a tool, showing a smooth curved surface. "Ha!" Dead Yan Bei looked at the empty place with only a big round pit left, and showed a disdainful smile. Suddenly, Zhou Mai reminded him, "Be careful, he's up there." In midair, Zhou Kang looked at Yan Bei with anger. This was the first time he was so embarrassed since he awakened his ability. If he hadn't been able to fly at high speed and escape before the space collapse started, he would have died. "Go to hell," he shouted and punched Yan Bei's face through the air. There was no mental fluctuation, no shock wave, and no fire, lightning, or other power ejected. But Yan Bei felt a pain in his stomach and was directly knocked out by this punch through the air. This is another ability of Zhou Kang. He can use the air to transmit his power losslessly, that is, he can directly transmit his power to the opponent through the air when he punches. But when he wanted to punch Yan Bei again, 3 consecutive red rays shot towards him. Zhou Kang had to give up the attack and quickly flew to the side to avoid the 3 rays. But then Xiu Mei seemed to no longer hold back his strength. Between the 10 fingers, rays shot towards Xiu Mei flying in the air. Some of these rays could melt steel, some were full of cold air, and some were full of radiation power. Faced with these powerful and fast rays, Zhou Kang could only dodge again and again, feeling extremely frustrated. He wanted to rush towards Xiu Mei several times, but as the distance got closer, the rays were faster and intertwined more densely, forcing him to retreat. Then Yan Bei also climbed up from the ground, holding his stomach. His eyes revealed madness. "Damn it, I'm going to kill you." Boom! A thought came out of Yan Bei's body, and Yan Bei raised his hands high, and a force that was enough to change everything came out from his hands. Yan Bei waved his hands wildly, and more than a dozen collapse force fields appeared around Zhou Kang, almost crushing him into powder. On the other side, Tang Vihan also screamed wildly, and the flesh on his back suddenly broke open, and 2 wings stretched out from his back. His whole image had turned into a werewolf with bat wings. Then he waved his wings vigorously, and he had risen into the air, rushing towards Zhou Kang who was flying around. This time Zhou Kang was besieged by 3 people. Although his flying speed was very fast and he could predict other people's attacks in advance, whether it was Yan Bei or Xiu Mei, their collapse or death light was super fast, and Tang Vihan relied on his ability to transform and his fearless body to entangle Zhou Kang. In less than a minute, Zhou Kang was already struggling. In order to avoid the attack of the death light and the collapse force field, he began to endure Tang Vihan's fierce attack. Although the opponent's strength was not as good as his, plus he had a strong body, he was constantly hit and clawed, and his body began to ache. In addition, in order to avoid Yan Bei's collapse attack just now, Zhou Kang's right hand was rubbed by the death light of the left meridian. A burning feeling came out of his palm, making him feel a sharp pain in his entire right hand, as if it was being roasted by fire all the time. Zhou Kang suddenly had the idea of retreating in his heart. Are all these guys crazy? Why does Daxia Dragon Bird have so many powerful ability users? At this time, Zhou Kang's chest was full of regret. Damn it, damn it, damn it. I'm hiding in Gushan and enjoying myself. Isn't it quite happy? Why did I come to Tianjing to find this damn Daxia Dragon Bird? Suddenly he roared to the sky, spread his power through the air, and attacked the internal organs of Yan Bei and the other three. Yan Bei and the other three were suddenly struck by lightning, and felt as if they were hit by a big iron hammer in the chest. If it weren't for the protection of the mind, I'm afraid they would have been killed directly. But Zhou Kang also took this opportunity to leave quickly. He was seen flying towards the south in the air like an arrow from a string. Damn, why are there so many strong people in this world? Zhou Kang, who was beaten and fled by 3 people, was furious. This was the first time he was suppressed by someone and had to flee, and he was also a capable person. He had always thought that he was special and unique since he was a child. He had 4 abilities at the same time: mind reading, flying, steel and iron body, and air conduction. He always thought that he had the strongest ability in the world. But now, not long after arriving in Tianjing, he was defeated by 3 people. Especially the man who performed collapse, who posed the greatest threat to him. No, there can't be so many strong people in the world. These 3 guys must be the strongest in Daxia Lonke. Even this Daxia Lonke may be the most powerful organization of ability users in the entire world. Zhou Kang said bitterly, with 3 of them together, it will be difficult for me to defeat them, but they will always separate when the time comes. I will kill them one by one. Just as Zhou Kang was thinking about how to deal with Yan Bei and the others, a large crowd of people appeared in front of him, all pointing at him in mid-air. It turned out that Zhou Kang had already flown away from the place where the crowd had been cleared just now. Look, someone is flying. Mom, there's someone flying above us. Damn, it can't be a stunt. Looking at the ant-like mortals at his feet, Zhou Kang felt a burst of disdain, but he quickly frowned. There was a guy in the crowd who was very special, with special power. He seemed to be a person with abilities, but his power fluctuations were much smaller than those of the previous ones. Much weaker. This kind of strength makes him feel much more satisfied, right? This is the real world, and there is no one who is not much worse than him. Zhou Kang stopped in mid-air and asked the man in the crowd, "Hey, are you also from Daxia Lonke?" As soon as the other person answered yes, Zhou Kang planned to kill him to vent his anger. "Well, my name is Li Enping." The man narrowed his eyes and looked at Zhou Kang coldly. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiong Lango. Chapter 147. Zhou Kang looked at Li Enping at his feet and laughed loudly. "You are so unlucky. I'm in a bad mood right now, but you hit the point of the gun. I'm going to twist your head off. It's useless even if you kneel down and apologize now." Li Enping glanced at Zhou Kang and punched him directly. When Zhou Kang reacted, the terrifying punch force had already passed by his ear and rushed towards the sky. The huge force even caused temporary deafness in his ears. I saw a huge force compressing the air to form a shock wave. The shock wave went straight into the sky. Wherever it passed, the atmosphere roared, and the glass on the surrounding tall buildings was shattered at the same time. In the sky, the clouds were torn apart, revealing a huge hole with a diameter of more than 100 meters, and the dark blue sky emerged from the hole. Zhou Kang stared blankly at the huge hole in the sky, speechless. The crowd around him screamed and dispersed after Li Anping punched him and shattered the glass of the building. Only a dull Jokang and a cold-looking Li Anping were left on the road. Li Anping shook his fist and said, "What did you just say? I didn't hear it clearly. Can you say it again?" Jokang swallowed his saliva and felt that his mind went blank. He didn't know what to say. The power displayed by the other party was completely beyond his imagination. It was a power that made him unable to resist at all. He landed carefully and stood in front of Li Anping. After hesitating for a long time, he finally said, "You won't kill me, will you?" "Not yet," Li Anping sneered and suddenly turned his head to look behind Jokang. 100 meters away, Yan Bei, Zhou Mai and Tang Vihan looked hesitant, wondering whether they should come over or not. Li Anping pointed his fingers at them, and the three of them walked up reluctantly. Tang Vihan also put away his wings and wolf head and returned to his former sunny boy appearance, which actually made Li Anping look interested. "Can you still change like this?" Li Anping asked curiously. "Can you become like Audrey? Or a devil or something like that?" Tang Vihan nodded, glanced at Li Anping carefully and said, "Okay, yes. But to become a fantasy creature like this, you need to practice more beforehand." Li Anping nodded and glanced at Yan Bei and Xiu Umei. The latter felt his gaze and they didn't dare to look at each other. They subconsciously looked to their side or the ground. Li Anping didn't take it seriously and said calmly, "You can mess up such a simple thing. You send Jokang to the 8th Research Institute first, and then the three of you go to Lusheng together and confine each of them for 15 days. Well, so it only takes 10 days. Yes, the three of them did not dare to resist. After accepting the order, they quickly left with Jokang, especially Yan Bei and Tang Vihan, who walked very fast with Jokang on their left and right. When they just woke up from the dungeon, because they had been sleeping for too long and their minds were not clear, they were taught the worst by Li Anping. It can be said that they are the most afraid of Li Anping in the entire Daxia dragon bird. They often only exist in places where Li Anping exists, unless it is necessary. Neither of them can see each other, and therefore, I don't know if it's because they share the same problem, but they actually get along well. As for Jokang, he was as obedient as a tamed puppy from now on, with no intention of resisting at all. As for whether he would resist when he arrived at the 8th Research Institute, Li Anping believed that the defense force there was enough to keep him in check. Li Anping, after the three people left, Xia Yunyun also walked up to Li Anping, looked at him seriously and said, "Thank you." Li Anping nodded, turned around and left. Unexpectedly, Xia Yunyun suddenly stopped in front of him and asked, "Are you avoiding me?" No, Li Anping turned away. "Then why do you rarely go home recently? How many days have I not seen you?" Xia Yunyun shouted loudly, looking like a resentful woman who had been neglected for a long time. There were many people wearing blue and white uniforms on the side. They were the people responsible for the aftermath of the incident. Some of them were proficient in hypnosis or similar abilities and could erase the memories of most witnesses in time. At this time, when they heard Xia Yunyun's cry, they couldn't help but look at Li Anping, especially some of the beautiful team members, who had a look of resentment on their faces. However, after Li Anping glanced at them, they immediately turned their heads and went back to work. "Yes, you have so many beauties that you like now, so you can taste them. Of course you are not interested in me anymore," Xia Yunyun said quietly. Li Anping heard Xia Yunyun's words and said helplessly, "I've been very busy recently. If you have anything to do, call me or Li Qian. I promise your grandpa will take care of you." "Is it grandpa again?" Xia Yunyun looked at Li Anping's back with some disappointment. He didn't look away until he got on a car. During today's encounter, Xia Yunyun felt that the gap between the two had not been narrowed, but had become wider. Is it because of strength? Xia Yunyun clenched his fists. The same thing happened with Grandpa, the same thing happened with Song Tian, as well as today's thing, and the relationship with Li Anping. I'm too weak to do anything. If I could be more powerful, instead of using the 5th level, even if it was the 4th level, even if my ability was weak, my mental energy would be stronger, maybe my relationship with him could also be. When Xia Yunyun thought of this, a trace of blush appeared on her face, but the fighting spirit in her eyes was burning. The strength of the other party makes people look up to her, and the helping hand that gave him hope when she was at her most desperate. Unknowingly, Li Anping's death has left an indelible shadow in Xia Yunyun's heart. Institute Number 8, Underground Floor 15. Li Anping and Shi Wen stood behind a glass window. Inside the glass window was a laboratory. Zhou Kong was tied to the laboratory table with layers of restraints. He had already fallen into a coma. A group of staff in white coats were surrounding him. Various routine examinations such as blood draws, B ultrasounds, and X-rays were in progress. Behind the glass window, Shi Wen said excitedly, "It's amazing that one person has 4 superpowers. This is really a perfect test product. By cloning this test product, our success rate will be greatly improved. Maybe each of his clones will only inherit 1 or 2 abilities, but the probability that the clone is a capable person is greatly increased. Even if we figure out how he got the 4 superpowers, maybe we can produce powerful multiple capable people ourselves." "Okay, doctor, take your time. The most important thing at the moment is cloning." Li Anping interrupted Shi Wen, who was lost in his fantasy, and brought the question back to reality. "Speed up the cloning, especially this latest test product. Since his clone's ability inheritance rate will be the highest, use him to replace the previous Kylin I type as the main production model." "No problem," Shi Wen agreed. Li Anping squinted his eyes and looked at a staff member in the laboratory. The other party was obviously a leader in the current laboratory, but with brown hair and green eyes, he was particularly eye-catching among a group of black-haired and yellow-skinned Daxia people. "How is he adapting?" Li Anping asked. "Haha, you mean Norman Osborn," Shi Wen laughed. "He is really a genius. After knowing the existence of people with special abilities, he immediately devoted himself to work. He is even more fanatical than me on some topics about people with special abilities." Li Anping nodded, but didn't say anything. After all, the time was short. He had to wait at least 1 or 2 years. After confirming that the other party had no problems, he would allow Daxia Lonke to reduce the intensity of surveillance on Norman. And he heard from Scorpion that the other party had a nephew who had awakened his ability and was investigating the disappearance of his uncle outside. However, with Li Anping's confidentiality of the 8th Research Institute, if he didn't have extremely high power in Daxia, it would be impossible to find out here, even if he was a person with special abilities. Then Li Anping asked Shi Wen about the recent situation of the 8th Research Institute. Shi Wen was very satisfied. Whether it was equipment, researchers, resources, or materials, they were all sufficient with the support of Daxia Lonke. Especially after Li Anping subdued the Zhang family, he asked the Zhang family to fully support the research of the 8th Research Institute. With the foundation of the other 9 royal families, both Li Anping and Shi Wen had too much money to spend. Now the only thing the 8th Research Institute needed was time and more experimental materials. That night, Li Anping harvested another batch of newly completed Kylin I types and walked out of the 8th Research Institute. After the accumulation of this period of time, his physical fitness finally improved slightly again, reaching 16.6 in strength, 15.7 in speed, and 17.7 in physical fitness. Getting on the car, Li Anping told the driver to drive to the base of Daxia Lonke. He took out a newspaper again and read it, scanning the data of the monitored person at a glance. Li Anping's brain was like a supercomputer, filtering and summarizing the information of the entire Tianjing one by one. 20 minutes later, Li Anping's brain suddenly felt tired, and he remembered that he seemed to have not slept for a week. During this time, he has been monitoring, harvesting clones, managing dragon bird guards, contacting Zhang's support, one thing after another. After all, under the oppression of the Star Alliance and Ice Castle, he dared not relax at all. But even with Li Anping's physique, it is not possible to go without rest for such a long time. After thinking about it, Li Anping closed his eyes and planned to take a nap during the time in the car. But this sleep, Li Anping's whole body suddenly fell into the deepest sleep. A trace of black mind energy emerged from his back and poured into his brain. In a void of consciousness, Li Anping suddenly opened his eyes. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xianglang Guo. Chapter 148. Li Anping opened his eyes, and the cars and tall buildings around him had disappeared. All he could see was pure white earth and pure white sky. Everything was white. What is this? Li Anping looked at the scene in front of him and slowly recalled, isn't this the dream I often had when he just possessed me? Looking at the vast and boundless pure white earth under his feet, Li Anping frowned, what's going on, am I in a dream again? But Li Anping soon realized that something was wrong. He found that he could not control his body at all in this dream. He was like a spectator from the first perspective, and could only watch the body move. Yes, it was this body from the first perspective. Li Anping could see the hands and feet of this body, which were obviously not his, or even human hands and feet. The soles of his feet were like horse hooves, and there were arms covered with black scales, and the entire body surface was a faint black. Li Anping could not control this black, monster-like body, and could only watch this body walk on the ground. Unlike the last dream, this time Li Anping saw many creatures on this land. Some of them looked like horses, but they had flaming mane and charred marks on their hooves. Some looked like lions, but they had bat-like wings and scorpion tails. All the monsters here looked similar to the real ones, but each of them was different from the real ones, making them look like monsters. Along the way, Li Anping saw thousands of such creatures on this land, just like a large collection of monsters. The only thing in common was that their bodies were more or less light black. Li Anping watched this black body walking on the land. No matter what kind of creature it met, it showed a complete submission to this body. And this body also showed an attitude of arbitrary demand for the monsters on the land. Facing those monsters kneeling on the ground, he sometimes ignored them, and sometimes just reached out and took out a heart from the monster to eat, or tore off a large piece of muscle to chew. But even if he tore his companions to pieces in front of those creatures, no monster dared to resist. This body was like the king of this land. And all the creatures on the land were his food, and he could harvest them at will. There is no way to affect this body. Is this really a dream, or, whose memory is it? In Li Anping's mind, he remembered the creature that had been sleeping for a long time, and he was silent. So he just watched, and he found that the owner of this body seemed to be aimless in all his actions, just immersed in the pleasure brought by appetite and killing. Black, is it you? Is this your memory? Li Anping shouted in the world of consciousness, but no one answered him. Suddenly he felt his heart tighten, and the whole world had been shattered. There was no white land and monsters in front of him. Li Anping was already in a starry sky. And under his feet, a blue planet was slowly turning. This is... Before Li Anping could react, he felt a strong call coming from the bottom of his feet, just like the call of his own kind. Unable to resist the throbbing in his heart, Li Anping rushed towards the planet under his feet. Passing through the exosphere, stratosphere, and troposphere, a vast land with no end in sight appeared in front of Li Anping. Looking at the strange and familiar appearance of the whole land, Li Anping murmured, "Is this the Western continent?" The next moment, Li Anping's descent speed increased again, and in a blink of an eye he had arrived above a small town. This town is surrounded by green mountains and clear waters, and the scenery is beautiful. Obviously, it is also a good place to cultivate one's character and relax the body. But the town at this time is definitely different from usual. There were flames and amazing explosions everywhere. The streets were full of blonde and blue-eyed panicked people. Behind the crowds, there was a group of black, agile monsters. These monsters were not only fast and powerful, but also terrifyingly, whenever they caught up with someone, they would throw the person to the ground and start biting him. They were eating people. The whole town was like hell, which shocked Li Anping. He wanted to move his body to kill those cannibals, but he found that after he rushed over, he was like a ball of air, easily passing through the bodies of the monsters, and he had no way to deal with them. And the living people in the town were getting fewer and fewer. Ordinary guns and cold weapons could not stop the attack of the monsters at all. In a blink of an eye, there were only more than 30 living people left in the whole town. What was more terrifying was that almost every one of the people killed by the monsters stood up and turned into that kind of monster, continuing to chase humans. At this time, the remaining more than 30 living people in the town gathered in a church. They locked the door of the church in an attempt to resist the thousands of monsters outside the church. But apparently even they themselves thought it was impossible. Most people were already filled with despair, and some knelt on the ground, begging God to save them. Just when Li Anping thought that these 30-odd people were dead, two figures flew in the sky. The one in front was a white-haired man. When he saw the thousands of weirdos under his feet, he just waved his hand. An amazing scene happened. All the thousands of monsters actually floated towards the sky. Each of them seemed to have lost gravity and floated up as if in the universe. Gravity control? No, only the monsters flew up. Is it telekinesis? No, these monsters are moving, and they don't seem to be blocked from moving. Li Anping didn't see what ability the white-haired man used for a while, and saw him clench his hands again. So the sea of monsters covering the sky and the sun in the air has all surrounded a point in the center. That point in the sky is like a black hole, sucking all the monsters over, but this black hole does not make the monsters disappear like the imagined black hole, but sucks all the monsters together. Thousands of monsters were sucked into a ball, forming a sphere composed of densely packed people. It looks like an asteroid composed of countless human bodies, which makes people's scalps numb. The white-haired man in front of him is undoubtedly a level 5 ability user, which caused this miracle-like scene. The white-haired man who had done all this nodded to the person who flew with him behind him, as if he had just done something insignificant. Flying with him was a young-looking blonde woman with a pretty face and a slender figure. Just in terms of her face, she was comparable to the top stars in the entertainment industry, but what was more special was her extraordinary temperament, just like the stars in the sky, making people feel noble and elegant. Li Anping had seen many beauties, but whether it was Xia Yunyun, Li Qian, Xiao Suesu, or Wei Shishi who had met earlier, although they all had their own merits, they all seemed to be a little worse than the blonde woman in front of him. The blonde woman also nodded to the man, and the next moment she pointed to the church under her feet, and all the citizens in it fell asleep. Then she pointed at the human body planet in the air, and an invisible force passed through the thousands of weirdos. The weirdos who were struggling and moving on the sphere all stopped and calmed down. They were motionless like a dead body, staring straight ahead. This woman, does she have the ability of mind control? It seems to be the 5th energy level. Li Anping stared at the blonde woman in the air. Who are they? Are they the top strong men in the Western continent? Just as Li Anping couldn't help but observe the two men and women, the blonde woman suddenly turned her head, frowned, and glared at Li Anping. What, she can see me? Just as Li Anping wanted to say something, with the blonde woman's glare, he felt a heart-wrenching pain in his body, and the world in front of him was broken again. Li Anping in the car opened his eyes and spit out a mouthful of blood with a puff, and then opened his mouth and spit out several mouthfuls of blood. He felt that his internal organs seemed to have been shattered. The driver stopped the car immediately, nervously dialed the phone, and asked Li Anping, "Sir, are you okay? I'll call the medical room now." "No need." Li Anping waved his hand. His internal organs had recovered under the ability of super-fast regeneration. But he still remembered everything he had experienced in the dream just now. But was everything just now really a dream? The attack made by the woman on him really affected his body. Li Anping couldn't wait to verify whether this was a dream. Also, did the woman hurt him with a mental attack? Li Anping has come a long way. Many people who can attack through the mind have their abilities ineffective against him. Even a level 5 ability user like SpecialAbilities cannot directly affect Li Anping's brain with his illusion ability. Li Anping thinks it's time to test how resistant he is to mental attacks. What Li Anping doesn't know is that if his soul is not in the body, the mental attack of the blonde woman can't hurt him at all. His body has long been different from that of humans, and he is naturally immune to all mental abilities. On the other side, in the distant western continent, when the blonde woman defeated Li Anping with one blow, the white-haired man beside him said in surprise, "Alliance leader, I feel the fluctuation of your power. Is there any problem?" "Nothing, just a peeping ant, it should be dead now," the blonde woman said proudly. "You can transport these monsters back to base 25. I still need to support Yulia." "Yes, sir," the man leaned over and replied, then waved his right hand, and flew away with the human planet in the air. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Lango. Chapter 149. In the office, Li Anping scanned the computer screen at a glance. The screen was full of scenes of some western towns. He wanted to verify whether his dream just now was true or false. Li Anping privately guessed that this should be related to the black spirit figure that always appeared behind him recently. It seemed that as his power increased, the figure appeared more and more frequently. Maybe this dream was also affected by the figure. He had checked the White Land and various monsters before, but found nothing except a bunch of myths. So he set his sights on the town he saw in the dream. With his super memory, Li Anping memorized the scenes of the town in his mind. Then he searched the internet based on these scenes, trying to find this town in reality. However, there are too many similar small towns in the western continent. Li Anping still couldn't find them after comparing many pictures on the internet. After all, he also clicked on them one by one with the mouse, which was too slow. At this moment, someone knocked on the door, and Li Anping said without raising his head, "Come in." Momo, with dyed blonde hair, walked in timidly and said softly, "Sir, do you want to talk to me?" Li Anping looked up at him and asked, "Your ability is to control the computer through consciousness, right?" Yes, Momo said stiffly. Li Anping continued, "Then help me find a small town. I will describe the scene over there to you, and you can find it on the internet to see where this town is in the western continent. Can this be done?" "I think it should be possible," Momo nodded as if he understood. Next, he sat in Li Anping's seat, and Li Anping stood aside and began to report the scene of the small town in his memory. Momo stretched out a finger towards the USB port of the computer host, and then saw a blue mind energy coming out from his finger and slowly connected to the port. The computer host suddenly rang, and countless windows popped up on the computer screen in an instant. A dazzling search page kept popping up, and dozens of photos of various towns in the western continent were refreshed, which made Li Anping dizzy. This search speed was much faster. 5 minutes later, the screen stopped at a poetic photo of a town. Momo asked, "Sir, is this the place?" Li Anping looked carefully and shook his head, "Not here." So the computer screen started refreshing again, and this time there were no windows at all. Countless data kept popping up. With Li Anping's ordinary computer level, he couldn't understand what Momo was doing. In the next half an hour, Momo found more than a dozen photos of towns for Li Anping, and Li Anping denied them one by one. Is it really a dream? Li Anping thought, but if it is really a dream, why is my body injured in reality? Could it be a person with the ability to attack me in a dream? But how did he know that I had dreamed of the White Land? Coincidence or? Just as Li Anping was thinking, Momo opened a photo again and asked, "Sir, is this the place?" Li Anping stared at the photo closely and said coldly, "It's here." "What's the name of this place?" Let me take a look." A series of information popped up on the computer screen, and Momo read, "This is a small town near the west coast of the Amist Federation, called Tigris. It is a relatively famous tourist town in the local area." Li Anping thought for a while and said, "Check if there is any news about this town recently." Momo nodded, and the computer screen began to jump again, and rows of news about the town popped up. Li Anping read it from far to near according to time. A werewolf is suspected in Tigris. Witnesses were bitten. Many people in Tigris were attacked, all bitten. The central hospital of Tigris town found that the body was stolen, and the police are currently investigating. After a series of news, Li Anping jumped directly to the latest news. A mudslide occurred in the town of Tigris. The only two main roads in the town were completely buried. Rescue work is currently underway. Mudslide. After reading a series of news, ordinary people would not feel anything, but Li Anping connected the things in his dream and obviously noticed something fishy. Li Anping thought of the outbreak of cannibalism in the western continent. The initial outbreak seemed to be near the town of Tigris. So, are the so-called cannibals the weirdos he saw? It is said that the conflict between the imaginary agencies of the Star Alliance and the Amist Federation was due to the problem of dealing with cannibals. There were too many coincidences, and Li Anping gradually felt that his dream was not a real dream. Obviously, the weirdos were the root cause of the bites in the town of Tigris, and the so-called mudslide was probably a lie made up by the authorities to block the town. The blonde woman and the white-haired man were the superpowers sent to clean up the weirdos. Wait, the white-haired man. Halfway through thinking, Li Anping suddenly said to Momo, "Get the information of all level 5 ability users in the database." Momo's heart moved when he heard this, and more than 20 photos of level 5 ability users popped up on the computer. Li Anping also saw photos of Xiaolikan, Fei Zhang, Zhu Rong, and Song Bang. Suddenly, Li Anping's eyes tightened, and he pointed at one of the white-haired men and said, "Who is this man?" Momo clicked on the photo of the white-haired man, revealing a long list of information. Momo said, "He is a Titan from the Star Alliance. His ability is to manipulate gravity, a first-order ability. He is also a top expert in the 5th energy level. Almost everyone in Daxia Longke knows him." "Everyone knows him?" Li Anping asked curiously. Momo nodded silently and pointed to the computer screen. A line of information about Titan was enlarged. After Li Anping read it, his expression was choked. Momo said lightly, 10 years ago, he led a group of level 4 ability users to attack the headquarters of Daxia Longke alone. At that time, Zhu Rong had not yet become a level 5 ability user. General Xia, General Song, Song Bang and General Fei fought him desperately together. At the cost of 3 people being seriously injured, they only temporarily repelled Titan. Li Anping understood in his heart that the white-haired man was a Titan from the Star Alliance, so the blonde woman next to him was probably also from the Star Alliance. If the second half of the dream is related to the first half is most likely from He. Li Anping suddenly remembered a few words that He had said. "My kind, my brother, my sibling. We have different abilities, but we are equally powerful. Humans are a race far superior to yours. When Kano is killed, they will also feel my presence. In order to delay the time for them to find you, from now on, I will take the initiative to fall into a deep sleep. And you, do your best to hunt and become stronger. If you eat enough people, maybe you will have a chance to escape when you meet them in the future." If the black spirit figure that appears from time to time since upgrading to the third energy level is really related to the sleeping He, then it seems that as my power increases again, the number of times this black figure appears is becoming more and more frequent, and this dream may not be related to him. The White Continent, the Black Monster, the first half of these dreams are too much like He's memories or thoughts. And the second half, it seems to be inspired by his kind. It presents a state of soul leaving the body, and suddenly crosses the sea and comes to the Western Continent. He said his kind would come to him. Are they from the Western Continent? Li Anping remembered the summoning he felt in his dream. Are they the companions that He said were looking for him? They could summon him from such a distance. The abilities of these monsters were beyond imagination. Li Anping thought of those cannibals and their abnormal bodies. He felt that even if these weirdos were not He's companions, they were probably created by his companions. And Titan and the blonde woman were obviously dealing with these things. Titan, as a high-level ability user of level 5, was sent to do this kind of thing, which showed the importance that the Star Alliance attached to these weirdos. Moreover, Li Anping knew his own abilities too well. Because of this, he was even more wary of He's so-called companions. Fortunately, the Western Continent was the territory of other countries and the main sphere of influence of the Star Alliance. This also made Li Anping think of why the Star Alliance had not heard from him since the arrogance of Bruman was extinguished. Is it because He's companions still have conflicts due to cannibalism and the outbreak of imaginary number mechanisms, so that the Star Alliance cannot spare manpower in the Western Continent for the time being? Li Anping guessed. However, these things are just Li Anping's guesses, and there is not enough evidence. Regardless of whether the Star Alliance is temporarily unable to take action, he needs to hurry up. I originally just wanted to catch the scattered people, it seems that those organized ones can't be let go casually. Li Anping thought, and my body's resistance to mental attacks must be tested. I have always been immune to mental attacks. Why that woman can hurt me, this needs to be studied carefully. I need more time, monitoring matters. Thinking of this, Li Anping looked at Momo and said, Momo, your ability is very useful, I need it very much. You will go to Liqian later, I want you to help me build an intelligence network together. Me, Momo pointed at himself and hurriedly said, really, me? You just have to obey, you can do it with your ability. Li Anping patted his shoulder and said, let's go find Liqian and come together. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xionglang Guo. Chapter 150. Li Anping looked at Liqian and Momo in front of him, and asked carefully, Momo, I want to develop a computer system that scans text from paper into the database every day, and then you analyze the text. Momo nodded and said, yes, I can operate the camera and judge with my human thinking. But how much data is there every day? About 1 to 2 GB every day. Momo smiled easily, that's too simple. The surveillance video of Tianjin alone is more than 10 times the capacity of this every day. That's good. These texts describe all kinds of intelligence. After the intelligence is collected and analyzed in the database, these are just the first step, Li Anping said to Liqian and Momo. In addition, there is the Great Xia Dragon Bird, secret agencies, military intelligence, newspapers, and things on the internet. I hope to include as much intelligence as possible into this database. I hope that through it, I can monitor the situation of the entire Daxia. Momo frowned and said, as for the existing data, as long as you can help me get the authority, I can collect it. But many places do not have ready-made intelligence in the form of electronic data. And so much data is not just a software problem. Li Anping understood what Momo meant. All kinds of information in the entire Daxia are scattered in various departments of Daxia. Population, household registration, accounts, archives, various surveillance videos, all intelligence is scattered in various departments and places. It is not something that Momo can do alone to collect them. It seems that this matter cannot be rushed. Li Anping sighed and said, then enter the data I only asked you to enter first. Li Anping handed the newspaper to Momo and told him, this newspaper is my second ability. New information will be updated every day. What you need to do is to enter it in real time. If you need any equipment, just email me directly. Momo looked at the newspaper in surprise. After scanning a few pages, the expression on his face kept changing, and cold sweat instantly covered the back of his head. Li Anping actually told him such an important thing, and he instantly felt that his future freedom was worrying. As for other intelligence, I will talk to the secret agency first and open up their database first. Li Anping thought for a while and then said, for the time being, these are the only two data sources. But regarding the issue of intelligence analysis, I will let Lu Feng help you, and you don't need to tell him how the intelligence comes from. Just let him and his team specify the method of analyzing intelligence, the classification of intelligence, and the structure of the entire intelligence data. You analyze based on these, rank by importance every day, and send me a catalog. No, make a simple web page. In addition to ranking by importance, I can also do fuzzy search according to my own goals. Momo nodded seriously. Li Anping directly gave him this kind of task, and he was now in a dilemma. Finally, Li Anping patted Momo on the shoulder and said, you are a smart person, but sometimes smart people are more likely to be confused. Let me tell you again, my second ability is to monitor many people every day. But from now on, you help me enter all the information into the database, and I only need to monitor you every day, right? How could Momo not understand such a naked threat? He swallowed and said, yes. However, Li Anping did not threaten blindly. He smiled lightly and said, you should work hard. From today, your position will be promoted 3 levels, and your benefits will be the same as those of a general. If you can develop a high intelligence program to replace you in the future, you won't have to work so hard every day. Don't worry, I will never treat you unfairly. Momo immediately kept expressing his loyalty, and Li Anping patted his shoulder again and let him go. Li Anping looked at Li Qian, who was expressionless, and asked, what's wrong? Am I useless? Li Qian said with tears in her eyes. How could it be? Li Anping forced a warm smile on his lips, and suddenly hugged Li Qian. From the beginning of Emerald City until now, you have been following me. Your ability is too important to me. Really, really? Li Qian looked at Li Anping with surprise, and when she found herself being hugged by Li Anping, her face couldn't help but blush. Although Li Anping's expression was a little unnatural, Li Qian, who was in surprise, didn't notice Li Anping's unnaturalness at all. Well, even in the current Daxia Longke, the only person I can really trust is you. Li Anping looked straight at Li Qian and said. Well, Li Qian blushed and nodded, feeling her heart beating so fast. Li Anping watched Li Qian jump up and down, happily leaving the office, and the expression on his face instantly became cold. He suddenly said, Roland, why are you still here? My lord. A young woman with a graceful figure and purple hair suddenly appeared in the air, looking at Li Anping in panic and said, Li Qian has already left, why don't you catch up with her? Li Anping looked at Roland coldly and said, don't forget to report Li Qian's affairs to me every day. Yes, yes. Roland nodded and disappeared into the air again. Because of the source of Li Qian's monitoring ability, and her ability could not monitor herself, Li Anping arranged Roland, a person with invisible ability, to follow her, both to protect and monitor her. Li Anping also lied just now. Even if Momo entered all the data in the newspaper into the database, Li Anping still had to monitor several people through the newspaper every day. Roland and Momo were among them. Sitting back in his seat, Li Anping picked up a document with a few lines of words on it. One of the lines was Li Qian's emotional assessment report, which was an analysis of Li Qian's daily behavior and emotional situation by more than a dozen psychology experts. The conclusion was that Li Qian had an unusual dependence and love for Li Anping. It was suggested that Li Anping could deepen this feeling through appropriate means. Li Anping glanced at it and put the document into the shredder. "I'm sorry, Li Qian, but for the strongest power, in order to create a world I want, I need a perfect intelligence network, even one day to cover the entire planet, so that I can know everything that happens in this society." Thinking of the Ice Castle, the Star Alliance, the White Land that appeared in the dream, the terrible monster, and the last two level 5 ability users, a man and a woman, Li Anping felt more and more urgent. A few days later, the 21st underground floor of the 8th Research Institute was also the lowest floor. A giant metal pillar more than 3 meters thick stood in the center of the room. The pillar extended to the outside of the room through a hole in the top of the room. Although it was impossible to see how thick the entire metal pillar was, the part that could be seen in the room alone was more than 20 meters long. And just below the giant metal pillar, Li Anping lifted it up with his right hand. He had an earphone next to his ear, and a voice came from it, "Sir, do you want to increase your strength?" "How much is it now?" Li Anping asked. "It's already 200 tons. Li Anping gently pushed his palm, and the giant metal pillar extending from the top of the room was pushed up several centimeters by him like a toy. He said calmly, "Add another 100 tons. A cry of surprise came from the other end of the headset, "Yes, yes, sir." With a bang, Li Anping felt an amazing force coming from the giant metal pillar. His body sank slightly, and his arm bent unconsciously. The giant metal pillar that had just been lifted up a few centimeters immediately dropped about 10 centimeters. But Li Anping shouted softly and pushed hard, and the entire giant metal pillar was pushed back to its original position again. With only one hand supporting such a heavy object, Li Anping felt that he was still far from his limit. He secretly sighed that it was right for him to have someone build this room. He wanted to exercise a little now, but ordinary equipment could not satisfy him. Just when Li Anping was about to add some weight, a voice came from the headset again, "Sir, Mr. Wei said that the guests you invited have arrived. They are waiting for you in the reception room number 21. "Oh, tell them I'll be there soon," Li Anping said, exhaled, and then pushed hard with his right hand. The entire metal pillar had already flown up into the air, and his people left in an instant. Then the metal pillar fell from the air with a loud bang, and the ground where it fell had already sunk. In the reception room, 3 young people were waiting anxiously. Suddenly, there was a loud bang under their feet, which scared them. What happened? Did it explode? Did someone break in? Did the Star Alliance break in? Just when the 3 were a little panicked, Li Anping pushed open the door of the reception room and walked in. Seeing the appearance of the 3, he smiled faintly and said, "Sorry, I just exercised a little bit, did I scare you?"